tiny house located behind the bookstore, she was drenched. Leaving her bike on the deck, she entered what had once been a working train car. The locals called Nora's house Caboose Cottage, and as she peeled off her wet clothes, she wished she could push it onto the tracks and ride to a place awash in sunshine. Too tired to return the phone calls or texts she'd received from Jedediah Craig, the handsome charismatic paramedic she was dating, or any of her secret book and scone society friends, Nora dropped on her bed and fell into a deep sleep. Neither the rumbles of thunder nor cracks of lightning could wake her. The next morning, there was finally a break in the rain. Buoyed by the sight of a pale sun fighting its way through the haze, Nora rode to the old tobacco barn where the flea market was held every weekend. Hoping to find a treasure trove of new shelf enhancers inside, she shopped the booths of her favorite sellers first. These were the people who treated her like a human instead of a burn victim. They were the people who'd look into her hazel eyes before letting their gazes stray to the octopi-shaped burn scars on her neck or the jellyfish bubbles swimming up her right arm. Eventually, they'd find the space above her pinky knuckle, a space created by hungry flames. Nora had been an attractive woman before the fire had marked her. She didn't regret her scars. She regretted the event that had caused them. Her recklessness had almost cost a mother and her young son their lives, which was why Nora refused to allow the plastic surgeon who'd operated on her face a few months back to repair the skin on her neck, arm, or hand. "You already worked a miracle on my face," she'd told him during one of her follow-up visits. "If I wear the right makeup, you can hardly tell that I was burned." She chose not to use the makeup, preferring to let her skin breathe, to let the thin scars show along her hairline where Dr. Patel had worked his magic. Nora didn't want to erase the evidence of her car accident, the fire, or the months in a burn unit. The married suburbanite librarian she used to be had died that night, and the woman who'd left the hospital to start a new life in Miracle Springs was a better person. She was uglier, poorer, stronger, and more compassionate than the woman who'd sped along that dark highway, fueled by rage and alcohol. "You want me to take off $3 because of that tiny wrinkle?" A vendor named Beatrice asked Nora. "You want my 6 kids to starve?" Beatrice loved to haggle. Her eyes were already glimmering at the prospect of a good back-and-forth session with Nora. 6? Last week it was 5, Nora said, holding back a smile. "And you know how fussy my customers are. They won't focus on the blue butterfly inside this paperweight, they'll focus on the crack." "That's no crack, it's a dimple," Beatrice objected. Nora put the paperweight aside and held up a vintage Bakelite alarm clock. Its yellow hue reminded her of a ripe lemon. "What about this? If I buy both of these, will you knock $5 off the total?" "5?" Beatrice acted affronted. "There's not a damn thing wrong with that clock." The haggling continued for several minutes. When it was over, Nora left the booth with the paperweight and clock as well as a hammered copper inkwell and blotter. She moved around the flea market, asking for discounts from every vendor. Though it had been a record-breaking week for Miracle Books, there was no telling what would happen next week. Life in retail was filled with uncertainty. An hour later, Nora's backpack was stuffed with treasures wrapped in newspaper. Deciding to return for more on Sunday, she headed for the exit and ran into her friend June. June Dixon managed the thermal pools for the Miracle Springs Lodge, the biggest hotel in town. June was in her 50s, but looked a decade younger. Her cafe au lait skin glowed with health, and her close-cropped black curls accentuated her high cheekbones and drew attention to her best feature, her golden brown eyes. "Are you coming or going?" June asked Nora. "Going. You?" June frowned. "I stopped by to find out about booth rental. I want to sell my socks here, but it's too pricey. I'd have to knit around the clock to pay for the privilege of sitting on my ass all weekend. No thanks." "I told you I'd sell your socks in my shop." "And you wouldn't burn me like the folks who run the gift shop at the lodge, but that experience made me realize that I don't want to owe anybody anything. I want to sell my stuff my way." The two friends ambled over to the last booth in the row. Situated close to the door, the booth belonged to an artisan known to the locals as Cherokee Danny. Every weekend, he and his wife arranged their wares on tables covered with hand-woven blankets. Danny was a potter, and his wife was a basket maker. The couple had been at the same spot since Nora had moved to Miracle Springs, but she'd never purchased anything from them. Living in a tiny house meant that Nora only had space for items she used on a daily basis. Other than her favorite books and a few antiques.